Raz, dwa, trzy. Okej. Raz, dwa, trzy.
Raz, raz. Siemaneczko.
Nic się nie dzieje, przed chwilą tutaj gadałeś?
Bo jest delay.
Okej. Przed chwilą gadałeś. Siemaneczko. A nie, dobrze. To dobrze zbiera oczywiście.
No. Ja mam słuchawek na szyi. Chyba, że też masz słuchawki Bluetooth, to możemy je...
Test. Test, test.
Okay, I guess we can start. So I would like to welcome everyone to the, I guess, first meet.js live in the office since a while. Yeah, that happened. I'm really glad to see you all. So the agenda for today is get the clicker working. Oh, perfect. We're at 6:30. We'll announce the contest shortly. Afterwards, Andrzej will say a few words about what has happened in JS World for the past couple of months. Later on, we'll have the first presentation, and after a short break, we'll have a second one. Afterwards, it will be pizza time. It will be delivered here to the office, and we'll have the announcement of the contest. You all know the rules. Just a few words about Oanda. Oanda is a fintech trading company established here in Kraków a year and a half ago, but originally from Toronto, and been on the market for over 20 years. We're doing trading platforms, and recently we're investing a lot in mobile-first development. And well, we'll talk about the tech stack later on with Christian during our presentation. The contest. This is the question that we would like you to answer. And the first correct answer wins. So the question is, if I owned 1,000 Apple shares in 1985, how many shares would you have now? So the contest starts now, and the first correct answer wins the prize. The prize, headphones. I've got them right here. They're real. If you'd like to participate, scan the QR code or go to the link that will be shared on YouTube in the chat and take your chance to win the prize. So I will leave that on the screen for a while. Also for everyone online. This also applies to anyone who's listening us on YouTube. So go ahead, scan this code, and we'll be looking for the correct answer. And the announcement will be at the end of the meetup, so after 8. Did everyone have a chance to scan the code? Okay, perfect. So Andrzej, whenever you're ready, you're up next.
Raz. Jak ci mogę wejść w swoją... O. Op. Cool. Awesome. Okay, cool. It's super nice to see all of you. It's been, I don't know how long, since the last in-person meetup. This is half and half, like bit in person, bit online, but it's super cool that we're getting back here. I hope we're gonna have more meetups like that in the future. A few are planned already, so yeah, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have more. I'm super glad we can just sit, have a beer and listen a little bit and look at each other instead of just looking in the computer all the time. So super glad to see all of you, super glad to know there are people watching online. Yeah, as I said, we're gonna do more, and I hope 2022 is gonna be huge for us. There were some plans about conferences and other stuff, but for reasons you might expect, we did not do what we wanted. So yeah, we're getting back, and it's gonna be only better. I'm just gonna have few words to say quickly, not to take too much of your time. Just to get you up to speed with some interesting news from JS World. There is this super fun thing which is called ELK, and looking at the dates of latest GitHub updates, it's fairly new thing. It's tiny JS engine for embedded systems. So if you are doing any kind of low-level stuff, Arduino-ish, and you want to write in JS because you're a front-end developer and you want to write everything in JS, you can. From more real front-end stuff, there is a sanitizer API being created right now. I think Chrome guys and Firefox guys are doing it. So instead, like, this is super common stuff that you want to insert some code, some custom, for example, code from your users, or you need to insert something, customly into the DOM, and you always need some library to sanitize the code. So you do not allow yourself to have any XSS attacks or anything like that. So because it's such a common thing, guys from Firefox and Chrome are working on a sanitizer API. So it should be, in few years maybe, it should be just a native thing. So you can sanitize your text before inserting to HTML. And now, yep, I cannot click anymore. Awesome. Yeah, jQuery UI has a new version. That's awesome. that's super funny. They are still going on and they are still maintaining. And for a second, I thought that it's like, who cares? But for example, I care because I can tell you from trusted source that even huge companies, I cannot tell the names, but like the biggest companies in the world, who create, for example, operating systems for some of your laptops, still use jQuery in production. So it is important stuff that jQuery is maintained and jQuery UI will be developed. It's super funny, but yeah, like even the biggest guy still depend on this stuff. Like I wouldn't imagine, but I saw it. So yeah. Then there is TypeScript 4.5 in beta. I'm not gonna tell you what's happening in there. They are just developing like crazy, and I just wanted to share it with you because also from my own experience, like when I first few years ago when TypeScript went live, I was like, who cares? We have JavaScript. This is dynamic language, so let's just write JavaScript. But honestly, TypeScript grew enormously, and the level of help it gives developer, especially if you have a properly configured editor to use TypeScript, it's insanely useful tool. So the development really goes like crazy. They are adding new features and fixing bugs really, really quickly. So yeah, this is cool. Last thing, the pipeline operator, something I'm waiting to become a part of JS since few years really, is on the second stage, I think, in TC39. So there are a lot of discussions right now whether it should be more like a hack version of pipeline operator or more F# version of pipeline operator. I don't care that much. I just want to see it be a part of JS because it simplifies functional programming insanely. So yeah, you can check the Ben Leach blog post and check a discussion about the pipeline operator and maybe become a part of it if you're interested in developing new parts of JS. And yeah, I'd hope it goes to next stages soon because it would be enormously useful. And the last thing, which I do not understand that well yet, but seems to be, well, probably useful too, is a new idea in CSS, Cascade Layers. So this is just to be short. This is a new feature in CSS that allows you to decide which of your CSS is more important. Like it allows you to create order of importance of your selectors. So instead of just having one important keyword, you can have like few important keywords with order of importance to them. And it's also in the discussion. I don't know how long until it goes live as a part of CSS. I don't know whether it's a good idea to make CSS more complicated, but looking at it, it's probably gonna be some kind of such thing will be a part of CSS because CSS is crazy hard to to get selectors right. So now you're gonna have the ability to make it more complicated and even more hard to maintain. And I think that's the last news. Yeah, that's the last news for today. So once again, thank you very much for coming. And I think I can shut up and guys can start their first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrzej.
Okay, so the first presentation for today. How to design a universal exchange API using GraphQL. It will be a presentation done by me. My name is Bartosz, and by Christian, who's here on the side. So I'm a team leader for one of the teams that is working in Kraków on this particular thing, and Christian is one of the architects supporting the whole development. So, what will you guys learn after this presentation? The key takeaways. First of all, you'll know what GraphQL is. You'll know when to choose GraphQL over other query languages, and maybe when not to choose GraphQL. That's also very important. And also, the last points, you'll see how GraphQL does its magic behind the scenes, and why it's cool and why we think it's a cool thing to do. But before we go into details, I'd like to ask you, does anyone use GraphQL or knows what GraphQL is? Oh, perfect. So like half of the audience. Awesome. Anyone online? I promise no questions. I just want to know. And I don't see the chat, so I don't see the answers. Oh yes, Andrzej, please turn on the comments. It will be definitely useful. And sorry everyone online for not spotting this. Thanks for pointing this out. Okay. So what is GraphQL for people that don't know? GraphQL is an open source query language which was developed by Facebook back in 2012. And the main purpose of GraphQL was to drive Facebook ever-growing mobile applications. So they had a lot of stuff to show to the users, but they needed a way to optimize it. So a clever team of engineers met up at Facebook and came up with GraphQL. It went live later in 2015, but it was long live in the mobile apps that Facebook was delivering to the customers. It's, well, I don't want to say it's similar to REST APIs, and we will definitely not try to compare GraphQL to any of the REST APIs that are out there. It's just another way of querying data from your server. So this is a graphical representation of the difference between GraphQL and REST. In the REST world, you can take whatever is served to you, whereas in GraphQL you can ask for a specific piece of data and it will be served to you just like this. And Christian will go into details how that actually works behind the scenes. And what we are building at Oanda and why we went into GraphQL world and invested a lot of time and effort into it. So this is a super simplified diagram of the application that will be shipping to production shortly. We have a React Native application. React was chosen as a technology that first of all supports Apollo and Apollo server and Apollo clients that we are also using. But it's a great technology that can serve customers on all the platforms. But it's not about React Native today. Then we've got Apollo server, like I mentioned, and a lot of different data sources that are Apollo server proxies to the client. And we're using different REST data sources, databases, different sockets, and also Kafka topics to combine all that information into one unified graph that is perfect for our application. Next, questions to ask before we can even start designing our application. And it's super important not for just GraphQL, but for every other software project that you might encounter. So first of all, we really want to avoid being in this situation. This is my favorite programming meme ever. So, well, let's be honest, we don't really want to end up with this contraption at the very bottom, but when the time passes, every software project has those kind of quirks. That's fine, but if we go through everything right from the very beginning, we can avoid at least this situation for a long time. So, first question: how much time and resources can you actually spend on developing the application that you want to build? It is extremely important to answer this question, as of course we want to build something. There are deadlines. There are people higher up, stakeholders that would really like to get this product out of the company's computers and to the customers. So the project that we are building, I would say it's mid-sized to a large project, and it took us at least 2 months before the development even started to go through all the possible options for the technologies that we would like to use. And we ended up using GraphQL because it fits perfectly into the domain of what Oanda is doing, which is well, creating different financial APIs and trading platforms and trading APIs. And that kind of data is really structural. It's connected on many levels, and it just represents a graph. So GraphQL was a perfect fit. It's worth mentioning that Apollo server, which we use, is not the only way you could use GraphQL. There are different implementations in Java, for example. We tried Micronaut for a second, but this didn't really work out. And because we answered one other question, which was, is the team that is tasked with building this particular application experienced enough to actually develop this piece of software? So we're a group of really experienced and great JavaScript developers, well, TypeScript developers, but that's the same as Andrzej mentioned. And we had the simple task in mind to create a great new trading experience for the customers. So we didn't really want to invest much time into doing Java or other languages. We knew that we're experts in JavaScript, so Apollo server and Apollo client SDKs that we used were the obvious choice. And I touched briefly on that previously. So what kind of data are we even talking about? That means we need to really answer ourselves if GraphQL is the right thing for us. It might not be. Maybe REST APIs or even different technologies are better, simpler. We can deliver applications faster. But then, like I mentioned, financial APIs, they're a perfect fit for Graph because they're connected. Prices, different instruments, different stats connect to those instruments. It all ties nicely together, and using GraphQL, it solved a lot of potential bottlenecks and sped up the whole process of serving the data to the applications, as you will see in a second. Because now it's Christian's turn to tell you a little bit more about how this actually works. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Bart.
Give me 1 second. I need to change the audio input. Okay, it should be good. Try to say something? Okay, we're alive.
Cool. So hello everyone. I'm Christian, together with Bart. I'm working on the new trading platform experience here at Oanda. And today I'm going to share with you why we decided to use GraphQL. Of course, each project is different. So first thing, what we had to do, we had to get all of the requirements, and then we had to ask ourselves about the questions from the previous slides. We, of course, spent some time working on POC before to make sure that the team will not face any blockers, any issues on the first day with the project. And then, finally, we decided to give GraphQL and Apollo a chance because not only because it's new and cool, but for us it's more than just a REST replacement. But I will tell about details on next slides. Many people are talking about the GraphQL as a backend created for frontend, and I think they are right. Let's imagine the situation when you have to start a new project which requires the work on both on backend and on frontend side. Usually it involves the work of two different teams with two different skills, right? Let's say that you have a front-end team which has a pretty strong JavaScript, TypeScript, and React skills. The team is able to start the work even tomorrow. Unfortunately, your backend resources are completely busy now. They can have different priorities or whatever. Since you want to move fast and start the new project as soon as possible, you need to solve this situation somehow. And this is where the Apollo comes with the rescue. Apollo offers for us solutions for both, for backend and for client side. Both implementations can be done with the same way by using JavaScript. So it fits pretty well to our team, and our front-end team became a full stack team, to be honest. So when planning the stories, we can start planning stories end to end. We don't need to wait for the team, for the backend team. And to be honest, it also decreases the implementation time. On the screen, you can see the visualization of the schema, which was generated by GraphQL Voyager tool. But wait, what is the schema? Our kind of business operates with the data, which can be easily represented on the graph. This is a pretty convenient way to represent what we are building. Of course, the schema, which is visible on the slide, is not the one we are using in our application. It's just the overview of what we are building. This contains only some example user query, which returns the user type with its own fields, like ID, name, email, and instruments fields. The instrument field returns for us the collection of another instrument type with its own fields, like ID, name, and price-related properties. This is pretty nice way to represent of what we are building, and nice way to find also the proper place to the particular data. Also for the new joiners, this is a good entry for the new developers who wants to understand the data and the structure of that data which is used in the application. Of course, the schema is not only needed for visualization. This is the most important place, the central place of the application. For both, for client side and for server side, this is, I think, the most important piece, because server resolvers has to be aware and consistent with the schema, and the same for client operations. For them, schema is like the core and foundation. Schema allows us also to specify custom rules for each field. You can do that by using built-in directives from Apollo, or you can use your own. The example of the built-in directive is the one visible on the screen. This is the deprecated directive, which is a nice approach which can be used as a replacement for versioning. If we would go to the schema and look how the implementation looks like, this is nothing else than just the types definition. The syntax is a little bit different than the one which is, for example, for TypeScript, but Apollo has nice tools to be able to generate the TypeScript types basing on the client operations together with the schema definition. So it means that you don't have to duplicate the same things twice. Apollo has also great community. Of course, comparing to popular REST approaches and solutions, the community is still growing, but it's growing pretty fast. So because of that, we have a lot of open source libraries and tools available. When we try to Google the particular issue or problem, you will find a lot of articles. Everything is well documented. There's a lot of examples. Pretty much everything you can find for free. Those are mostly open source solutions, but Apollo team also offers paid solution, which is Apollo Studio platform. So if you want to manage your schema or enable some kind of monitoring on your queries, you can take a look into that. State management could be the one of the most difficult parts on the client application. Historically, when building the client-side application, you had to design and implement state management from the scratch. Independent what kind of solution you would use, it ends up pretty much with the same. You have to handle the storage, update state, and enable reactivity. Apollo Client offers also a nice solution for state management. You don't have to care about different things. Everything happens automatically to you. You don't have to care about dispatching Redux actions or connecting your React component to the store. You don't have to care about updating React context. Apollo Client, what you have to do is just to call a simple query, and Apollo will take care about the rest. Of course, for more complex solutions, you have full control of what's happening in the cache API. You can specify your own merge functions, or you can use different fetching policy for your queries. So you can do whatever you want. So far for us, the Apollo client state management is enough. We don't need to include any external dependency to do that. If I would ask you as a programmers, what is the client-side application, probably some of you would respond to me that this is nothing else than just the data visualization. And I think you're right, because independent how fancy your design or application is, it ends up just with the data visualization. It could be some graph, it could be the table, or the list on the list. Developer will face the same kind of issues. He has to fetch the data somehow. It could be that it be multiple endpoints. You will have to care about race condition or failing one or more requests at the time. You have to store somewhere this data. You need to decide if the data is just for your component and should be stored in local state, or it's something also needed for the other part of the application and you should store that globally. All of those issues are solved in the Apollo. You just have to call one single query and you can get whatever you want. This is an example of the query, of the user query from the previous slide, where you can fetch everything at once. like ID, name, email, and fields for instruments as well. Click. Cool. Let's say that we want to build the simple component, which is basically the list of the instrument's components. For each instrument, we want to show only 3 informations, which is the instrument name, the sell and buy price. To do such simple operation, we just need to define those 3 fields under instruments for our user query. And as you can see, we just got the information what we need. So it solves also the overfetching issues for us. We don't have to care about that by using this approach. You are probably curious how the implementation looks from server perspective. Everything starts in the root query resolver, where the function returns the data. Then it, according to the schema definition, it goes to the nested children resolvers. So in our case, it goes to the instrument resolver. Each field has a corresponding function, the async function, which basically uses our internal underlying services as the data sources to fetch those informations. You will notice that for sell and buy field, we are using exact same endpoint. Apollo does great job with the caching. For the single operation, the request is only made once. Any subsequent next request uses first the response from the cache. So it means that the same request is not called twice. Let's say that we want to extend our instrument of list with 2 additional fields. Not sure if it's visible, but those fields are basically here. This is the low and high price. This is the preference of each instrument. To do that, one of our developers needed only around a few hours to do both, like backend and frontend together with testing. So how to start with this? First thing, as I mentioned, is the schema modification. We need to add such fields to our schema under instrument type. Then, of course, we need to modify a bit our instrument component to make a place for such information on the UI. So after that, we just need to go to our instrument resolvers and add those 2 additional fields, which are doing nothing else than just calling the new data source, which is a different REST endpoint. Of course, the static list like that doesn't have any sense because it shows the pricing. The pricing is the most important piece of information for our customers. It could be that the price for one single instrument is changing a few times per second. So we need to solve this issue somehow, and of course we can call our query in some kind of pooling or interval, but let's say it's not the best way to do. GraphQL supports 3 different types of operations. The one is the query to fetch the data, there is mutation to modify the data, and also the subscription for real-time updates. So this is something what we are going to use. To support subscriptions in Apollo GraphQL implementation, they are using WebSocket connection. This is one WebSocket connection which is made by client and is shared between multiple client subscriptions. So again, where to start? We need to go to the schema. We need to define a new subscription type. We need to define our subscription, which is in our case instruments price subscription. As you can see, we have to provide additional variable, which is the array of IDs, because there's no sense to subscribe to everything. We just need to subscribe to the particular group of elements which are visible to the user. And this subscription returns basically pretty much the same, or the same, what user instruments field does. So this is just an array of instruments element type. If you would look at the data which is sent from the server, it looks more or less like that. So as a first, you see that we can send some, let's say, initial message where you can include parameters like authorization or selected account or just whatever you want to. You will have an access in the server, on the server side, to those preferences in the context. We requested only the ID, sell, and buy fields for our instruments, and as you can see, the rule is the same as for query. We are only receiving the data we requested. Let's go deeper to the actual implementation of our component. Like Bart mentioned, we are using React and React Native as our tech stack. So the component implementation is done in React. And on the left side, we have our instruments list component, and on the right side, we have two operations defined and used by our component. This is a good practice, by the way, to keep the file with the operations definitions just next to the file where the actual component definition is located. So let's go a bit deeper what's happening in our query and subscription. We are querying things which are needed to build that list initially, right? We need instruments array assigned to this user, and for each instrument we need ID, name, sell, and buy price. For subscription, as you can see, it looks pretty similar, but we don't have a name property. And this is because the instrument name is pretty static. So there is no sense to send each time the same thing to the client. The key thing here is the ID. Apollo, by default, uses the ID together with the element type name as an identifier for the cache. It means that the data which will come from our subscription will go directly to the cache and will merge together with the currently existing data from the query. And this is pretty cool because the instrument list component implementation is really easy because of that. It has only 25 lines of the code. First thing what we need to do, we just need to query the data. Once we will get that data, we can subscribe to particular instruments based on the data returned from the query. And everything else, like updating the state, enabling reactivity, happens out of the box. We don't have to care that much about that. So only one thing, what we need to do, we need to render, we need to go over our data, our instruments, and map that to the instrument component. So for developers, it means that we don't have to care that much what's happening behind the scenes, but we have to we can pay our attention just on the UI. Of course, the implementation like that, let's say, is not complete because we have to care about multiple other things. We have to, for sure, use some flat list imported from React Native. We have to subscribe on scroll event, and basing on the current visible items, we should probably set the IDs for the variable, right? This is small detail regarding the implementation. how the subscription resolver from backend perspective looks like. Again, we need to define our subscription under subscription type, and there is one difference between the query and the subscription. We have to provide additional subscribe method. This is basically the method which is called first. Each time when the client is establishing the new subscription, this method is called and is taking care about triggering the updates. So what we are using here, we have some kind of feeder data source, which is nothing else than just the pricing farm for us. And from there we can get an async iterator. Each time when it will trigger the update, this function will be called. We can use, feeder is working in a way that independent what kind of instrument will receive the new price, it will trigger on this iterator. It means that we need to base on the parameters provided from our client and filter out the situation when we would receive the updates on instruments what we are not going to listen to. So to do that, we can use withFilter utility, also from Apollo server. And once withFilter will return the true value, the resolve function is executed with the payload returned from the feeder. And the next path is exact same as for query. So it's going to the nested resolver. So in our case, going to the instrument resolver, and is basically providing as a first parameter the data which was returned by parent resolver. Basing on that ID, we are able to resolve each single field what we want to. I think we got pretty much to the end of the presentation. So thank you for attention. And if you have any questions, just don't be shy. If you want to take something offline, also together with Bart, we are here and we are more than happy to talk about the details. Thank you.
So are there any questions?
So when we should definitely not use it? Promise to tell us.
Well, can I take it? As I said on the start, each project is different, right? So it's hard to say that this solution will fit well for everyone. Yeah, you need to get your requirements. You need to, check what kind of skills your team has, right? But let's say, answering to your question, if you have really simple application which only has to use like 2 different endpoints and render the data from there, I think this approach could be a little bit too big for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go to the beginning of the presentation, and if you answered to all the 3 questions that I presented, no, I can't, I don't know, that means you definitely shouldn't use GraphQL.
Thanks.
Do you store GraphQL queries in separate files with the GQL extension or inline in the JavaScript/TypeScript files?
Separate files.
Separate files, but without the GraphQL extension. This is just the TypeScript extension, and we are wrapping the operation inside the GraphQL tag, which you can import, like on the slide. From, can you click? Okay. So come on.
It will work.
On this slide. So this file has like TS extension, right?
Yeah, okay.
And so what about coloring support for this?
Yeah, you have available the plugin. Let's say if you are using Visual Studio Code, there is the plugin which supports coloring. Here, the plugin is turned off. for some particular issue, but yeah, it's possible. You can also click and move directly on the types.
Do you have any comparison in the company between teams? Like, do you have other teams that does not use GraphQL, or?
GraphQL is only used by one team for now.
Okay. Did you have like any chats between teams about, oh, we're using GraphQL, we're using REST, how that worked out for you, or did you get a chance to exchange opinions with other guys, or do you just live in your beautiful world and it's like, yeah, cool?
No, absolutely. We spent around 2 or even 3 months before we decided to use GraphQL. Our kind of business has to operate with the data which pretty quickly changes, right? For us, really important was, for example, that we can use subscriptions over WebSocket, and we have also to get like the more static data, right? So this solution fit for both in our case.
Okay.
So we don't have to care about things like authorization for different REST services, and separately we don't have to do the same in different way for Apollo, right? Or everything is just consistent for us.
Okay.
How do you deal with authorization in this case? For example, you only one part of the data can be fetched for one user. How do you?
Right. You are asking about authorization or about authentication at all? Because
authentication probably is one layer higher, but access to the data.
To the specific data based on some user rules, for example, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you have multiple solutions to that. You can write your own directives, like I mentioned, to do that, but there are also solutions what you can use out of the box, like GraphQL Shield. You can define the specific rules for each query or group of query, and this is done like some kind of the root resolver of each resolver which exists in the app. So first it goes to that. In case if you have a permission, you can check that basing on the stuff what you have in context, for example, right? And then you can allow or just throw an error or whatever.
Okay, but you can just fetch this data and only provide the data that is available for one user, or
you don't have to fetch. You don't have to fetch because, as I told, it's working in a way that it goes from the top, like from the root query, right, to the children resolvers. And the place where we are fetching the data is in this nested resolvers, right? So in case if the parent resolver will throw an authorization error, the children resolvers will not be executed at all. So it means that we don't have to fetch anything.
Okay, so you can fetch only one branch of the graph tree.
Yeah, exactly. We can base on user permissions to just fetch only partially the part of the graph.
There was one more question I saw.
Do you usually to maintain the graph types with the server? For instance, GraphQL code generator.
Can you repeat the question?
Types on the client side with the server.
This is a tricky question. And if you are asking that, you know why. Because not. There is no way for now to generate the types for backend. The tool which generates the types for the client side works in a way that it needs two things. It needs the particular client operation and the schema, right? Schema is basically downloaded from the remote endpoint. Then, basing on the each document which is included inside the stack, it goes over the whole project and is generating the types. Like here. So for backend implementation, unfortunately, at least for now, I don't know if maybe because like few weeks ago, Apollo introduced like the version 3 of Apollo server, so maybe they did some improvements for those things. But for version 2, there was no way. At least I was trying to do that, and I didn't find a solution.
Any other questions? Perfect. So we'll be available around, and I guess we'll take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to refill the beer and use the toilets if you need. And I also heard that someone already won the prize, so we'll announce it just after the second presentation. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
So, hey everyone. It seems that I'm the only invited guest on this meetup, so I have to introduce myself. So, my name is Michael, and I'm working in Remitly, and a few words about the company. So, Remitly is the remittance company, and remittance means that we are helping people to transfer their money to their relatives, to their family, whatever it is. So helping people to support people they care about. So it's kind of not really startup company. So the code base is kind of huge. So the problem I want to discuss now is a problem which growing in every company when you really want to perform some kind of refactoring and you're not really able to, and you have to do everything manually. So moving forward, okay, that's too late. So moving forward, we know that IDEs now are really mighty and supporting much refactorings you can do, but the things they are capable to is renaming something, extracting something, and that's probably it. So I'm constantly using IntelliJ and WebStorm, so JetBrains products. I'm not using VS Code, so correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably it of refactoring capabilities of the IDEs. So if we really want to do something more complex, we are facing the problem that we have to go through all of our code base and do refactoring manually. So the cases I wanted to introduce is kind of simple. You are using some kind of API, and it's updating. You're trying to be in touch with latest version. You're updating it as well. But let's say we've got latest version which introducing breaking changes, and you're not able to use it at all because your code base is different, and you have to change. I don't know. Let's say hundreds of files. That's the problem. So let's say you're introducing some kind of method which is going to replace some different one in your code base, and the signature of this method is completely different. So the problem is the same. You'll have to go through your code base and repeat the same action again and again. So that's the problem I wanted to resolve, because I never saw the solution for it. What just happened? So.
Next slide. Try clicking next slide.
It's just black. Nope. Okay, so yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, so going forwards, we'll have to know about such thing as abstract syntax tree to perform our sophisticated refactoring. So what is it? Abstract syntax tree is a let's say structure, and it's called abstract just because we can go through any language, any structure, and gather it to some tree which will represent everything we've got inside, and we can manipulate it later using some kind of entities provided by abstract syntax tree, regardless of the language we are using. So let's say we've got JavaScript, we can use it. We've got TypeScript, we can use it. We've got React JS6 insertions inside, we can use it. And even for Java, but we're not discussing Java here, we can use it. So next one is black again. Yeah. So the tool to visualize everything from your code and to understand how this abstract syntax tree looks like for your code is Asd Explorer. I will provide all the links in the very end of this presentation. So Asd Explorer provides you the ability to see which nodes you will have in this abstract syntax tree for your code, and using like this one, so this is the real example actually. So you can use this tree later on when you will write a code to refactor your code to understand how it will visit all the three nodes and manipulate those nodes using this type. It actually helps you to understand how parser will traverse this tree, so you will not make the mistake if you are going to write some complex refactoring code. So I've got a really simple and quick example. So we've got this test file, and in this test file we've got 5 assertions. Every single one of them is just comparing with true or false. So the problem is that after executing this test, and if it's failing, we've got the result that true is not false, and that's not really readable, and we don't understand why. So we have to refactor it to something like this. When we'll be comparing it to the string, and if strings are different, we understand what exactly is different. But this is not what your IDE is capable of, right? So what can we do here? So we've got tools for that. So first of those tools is Babel code mode. So everyone knows about Babel, right? What is it? So your Babel can transpile your code to the different version, let's say, of ECMAScript. And also, you can write some plugins for your code, for Babel, to transpile your code in some different way, or make some additions to that, gather some statistics, whatever you want. And also, you can run some plugins separately. So let's say you can write your plugin, which will refactor your code. You will write visitor code, which will revisit all the 3 nodes, and you can modify your code and then gather it back to real code and write the output to any file you want. So what I have here. Next thing is almost the same, but it provides a bit different API. It's called Recast, and it's doing almost the same thing, but it has different methodology inside. So Recast gathers this tree to some JSON structure at first, so you can do whatever you want with nodes, directly accessing them without the need to write some, to write some visitors, which will make some changes on the fly, but instead you're manipulating the existing tree. But just to be maybe the same as Babel, they've got this Asd types library, which it incorporates inside, and you can use the same pattern of visitor to manipulate nodes if you really want to. And the third tool is Facebook.js code shift, but it appears that it's just using Recast inside. So it's kind of wrapper, and it provides the CLI. So CLI actually is useful if you are going to batch transform, hundreds or thousands of files. But yeah, it could be really useful instead of applying some quick launch for your plugin inside of your IDE, because everyone is using different ones. So here I've gathered some links to some documentation and some articles for the real world examples you can read through and maybe find applicable to your cases. Because, for example, really good one is Yeah, update create class components to ES6 classes. Really useful real world scenario. And also, I want to tell this story. Why actually I wanted to say about that, because we used to use some really old library before JS6 syntax was supported in IDEs. So this library was called Hyperscript, from what I remember, and every single component in the code base was written using this Hyperscript. So just to transform everything manually, we'll have to spend, I don't know, weeks, months, or even years. That's a big problem. And my colleagues just started to learn how it works and just written the plugin for the Babel code mode. And with this plugin, every single developer, when he went into the file with this old syntax, could just click 2 buttons, and it will transform everything for you. Of course, there could be some mistakes, or I don't know, some corner cases, but in general, you can perform big, complex refactorings with just 2 clicks, and that's really an advantage. And I'm not sure about the video. Can we show it?
Of course.
Okay. Because I've got my small example, and okay. So those examples are here for Babel and Recast. So I've got this file with my test. So as you can see, it's just trying to compare. This is not the very beginning, right? Yeah, this is not the beginning. Yep. So this is the file we want to change. So how it looks like? We are just going. Yeah, this code. We are just going to our scripts and running it. It's taking. It's not telling how much. Okay. It's taking a second, and we've got an output, and everything is changed here, as you can see. It's pretty fast. And Recast example is almost the same. So we'll just remove the file, just to be honest that it works the same way, and run this Recast example. And it says that it has taken half a second. So the result is almost the same. So the thing is that by this small effort, relatively small effort, you can write the code which will write the code for you. So that's probably it, yeah, from the perspective of real world examples. And if you have any questions, please ask.
Can you show what you've done in the script? Because you said it's fairly easy. But
Yeah. The problem, it was a technical issue, actually. The code is in the repository. You can access it through the presentation later. And I'm not really able to show it right now because it's, presenting hardware.
You can probably check later over.
Yeah. So returning to the presentation, you've got a link here to the GitHub repository with the example.
Yeah, so we're just going to post on the meetup page the presentation.
So the thing is that you have to spend more time to learn how it works, not to implement it. So if you understand how it works, you can write some complicated examples, some complicated code.
So which one are you using? Which tool are you using on a daily basis?
You cannot say about this tool that you're using on a daily basis, right? Because if you are doing it, you are doing something wrong. So,
do you have a preferred one from those
So preferred one is Bible code mode, just because they do have really great documentation. They've got a handbook translated to almost every language I know. I can imagine. So this handbook contains everything about how the tree is being traversed, which kind of node types you have, and how to manipulate the code. So that's the preferable variant. But from the other side, if you want to use CLI, so let's say for something else, recast is your option.
Okay.
Anything else? Yep.
When you wrote those code modes, were you using TypeScript or JavaScript?
JavaScript. But it doesn't matter, actually. You can use anything you want. I mean, you can use TypeScript to write this code, which does anything.
Are there types for recast and paste types?
From what I know, they are, but I didn't check, to be honest.
Cool.
Okay, thanks.
So now, Anya, can I ask you for the announcement? Sorry about that.
So now the moment that we've been all waiting for, the competition. We have the winner, who's at the same time a boss, as you can see. Amniwai Chai, please come to the stage. Bravo! Here's the solution.
Yeah.
And here's the prize. Congratulations.
Okay, so that will be everything. Thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy the beer, and the pizza will be here shortly. Thank you.